Hey, billionaires. We're back with another episode of Billion and Better. I'm Emily Montiel.
I'm Ali Davar.
And today, Ali, what are we talking about?
Today we're talking about receiving feedback that helps you grow and what to do when it still hurts to receive that feedback.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
All right. I'm very excited to talk about this
me
today.
Me too. Let's get started.
Awesome. So, Emily, we were talking earlier about what the journey of building a big business looks like, because it's not a smooth, like step by step, a very straight path. It's very life happens, right? We've talked about like we have all these big goals. We know like where we want to take the company and what we're doing. But the reason we're doing this podcast is to really document the journey. But when life happens and some of the difficulties come up, whether it's in business or personal life, you start to question, am I on the right path? Can I do this thing? Like you start to have all these fears. And that's something you and I are close enough that talked about often. And let's talk about that today, right? So where do you want to start with that?
Where do I want to start? Well, I'll tell you personally, recently, it's definitely been a roller coaster. I think building a business definitely has some really high highs where you're feeling on top of the world and you feel whether it's a major accomplishment or, you know, you hit a goal. And then there's some low lows too, because building a business you said this, right? It's so reliant on your relationships with other people. You're carried on the backs of your team. Is that right? Is that how you say it?
On the shoulders of your people.
And relationships can be challenging. Mm-hmm. And one of the hardest things that I find in relationships is the points at which they make me hold a mirror to myself. Mm-hmm. I'm not super critical of other people. I feel like I'm pretty easygoing, but there have been times here recently where I've had to take a step back and look really hard at how I'm showing up, how I'm responding, how I'm handling, like, you know, how I'm relating to other people. People, even sometimes that I find challenging to relate to, like, that doesn't matter. And it's on me to fix that and stand up and do the right thing. And so the roller coaster here recently has really been looking at myself and taking my guard down, because I think our knee-jerk reaction as humans is to be like, nope, everything's fine, it's good, or to feel like a defensiveness even when something about you is challenged. And really growth happens when you can get beyond that and just be real with yourself. But it's hard. It's really hard to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What comes to my mind when I was listening to you is ego, right? And to me, that means a lot of things, because sometimes for me, ego has been lowering my guard to really listen to what somebody is saying. Because the first thing we do is get defensive, right? It's you know, even if you're really good at this, your first natural reaction to be a little bit defensive. That's part of ego. And also ego could be, for me, is like really thinking of who I am. And sometimes realizing that there's certain things I'm doing that's not really helping the business or profits, right? Let's like if the goal of the business was to be profitable, not to be just entrepreneurial and do just a bunch of random things, right? But to be after building a bigger business, going after your goals, or you know, essentially being profitable. A lot of times we do things just to satisfy our ego, right? There are a lot of things that we do. Like everybody talks about the 80-20 rule, but nobody talks about like 100-0. Like what are the things I do that absolutely add zero to the bottom line, right? Like I've had a lot of those in my journey where because I want to help, because I want to grow within the business, I pick up certain responsibilities. And I look back a year later, and I'm like, hey, this task that I've been doing once a week or once a day adds absolutely no value to anybody, to me or the company or anybody. So why are we doing this, right? But in the beginning, it's like, no, I have to do this, right?
Mm-hmm. For me, that just hit that 100-0 thing, because just me personally, it's not necessarily the tasks that I'm doing. I mean, there's definitely some of that. So you've given me something to reflect on and go back and see like where I'm really spending my time. But it's been, I think why recently it's been challenging for me is because I've been like called to the carpet to look at myself by myself. But that was, you know, I brought that on myself. It's not that somebody ever said to me, you need to take a hard look at who you are. But I realized the way that I am naturally that has gotten me success in the past, maybe I'm at a point now where it's actually hindering me. So that's my 100-0. I feel like I'm naturally a fighter. I'm naturally a very dominant personality. And when I look at the goal that we're working towards right now, that isn't serving me right now. And that's been really challenging because, like you, I think you experience like you want to help everybody. You want to do the things for people, and that's who you are naturally. And it feels inauthentic sometimes to not do those things. But when you're honest with yourself and you give yourself the objective point of view, you're like, okay, but it's authentically me, but it's not adding value. Same thing for me, kind of with my natural personality. I will never be inauthentic to who I am, but who I am right now is being a roadblock. And so how do I stay authentic to myself, but push things forward? Mm-hmm. How do I not change who I am, but maybe change the way that shows up and like harness that maybe in a different way to drive the results that I want? Mm-hmm. And when I was looking at that in myself, you know, my first instinct was, no, I don't want to change. This is who I am. It's brought me success before. But what am I more concerned about? Digging my heels in and never changing, you know, how I show up, or the end result, the journey actually, and the end result. And it's the journey and the end result. So what do I need to do to really own that and move things forward?
Yeah. So we're talking about challenges and relationships. So when it comes to a relationship where, because I know I've experienced this, when somebody is giving you feedback, but you feel like, I think I'm right? How do you go about that? How do you actually take feedback in a way that's going to improve you or help what you're trying to accomplish?
I don't know. You tell me.
This is what we're doing this, right? Like, so.
I was going to ask you the same thing. I don't know. You know, it's not easy. It's really not easy. But I think the first thing, something actually you taught me is to actually say out loud, like not even just think it. I think so many of us operate thinking that we do this, but say it out loud, name it. What is the goal here? What are we trying to do? Mm-hmm. Somebody once asked me in like a college class one time, it was like a writing prompt, like what's the hardest pill to swallow as an adult? And mm-hmm. the thing I wrote about was the realization that not everybody has good intentions like I do. Like my intention is always pure. That's how I operate. I will never change that. And not everybody has that. I believe in this company that we're building that we've found people who are also rooted in that same value. Like everybody's intentions are good. So the relationships that I have with those people, you know, when they give me feedback, I take a step back and remember, like, we built this team and I trust the person who's giving me the feedback. So it's not malicious. It's in order to drive towards a goal. So what are we trying to accomplish here? And that's about as far as I've gotten because I'm still learning. I'm definitely still growing because, what do you do when you feel like the feedback is inaccurate, or maybe not even inaccurate, but that you were just misunderstood because of different communication styles? And so while you want to take the feedback and have the person understand, I hear you, and our relationship is valuable, your feedback is valuable to me, and there's truth in what you're telling me. And at the same time, I also think that a little bit of it was a misunderstanding.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've definitely have struggled with this and still working on this in my career. I feel like this is something forever you're working on, right? Mm-hmm. Seeking the opinion of others is, to me, a very valuable thing, because I think nobody is really telling you the truth on what's in their head, or what they really think about you, right?
I know that sucks.
Yeah. So I mean,
that sucks.
Like, think about it. When do you actually tell even your best friend, this is what you like? Like, I've had some of these conversations with some of my best friends where I'm like, raw feedback. I'm like, dude, I love you. Like, this is one thing you don't see about yourself that patterns I've noticed in my life. in your in like our you know in your life that I've known you. But I wish like, man, can somebody give me everything they see? But I know when they do, my guards are up. I'm like really defending myself. So couple of things I've first of all, believing that everybody has something to teach you, right? Because there are moments, again, the ego might come up and say, I know this better than you, or you have no idea what you're talking about, right? So no matter who I'm talking to, like if a CEO is talking to a brand new employee, everybody has something to teach you. So I feel like if you go into it with that attitude of like, maybe the 99% of things they're telling me doesn't make sense, but what's that one thing that they're saying that's really nobody else is going to ever, like they're giving me something that's really valuable here. Second is knowing that, and by the way, all of these I've gotten from other people. This is the beauty of today's world. Like you can have all of these mentors or people that you can learn things from online or all over the place. So these are things I've really learned from everybody that you can find on YouTube too. So knowing that when somebody gives you feedback, it is going to hurt. It is going to hurt part of your ego. So and no matter how much you say this to yourself and work on it, it's still naturally your first reaction is going to be BS. What you're telling me is not correct. So you just want to shorten that reaction from that initial reaction to my guards are down. And the best way I've heard somebody say this is when somebody's giving you feedback, they're giving you gold. They're giving you imagine a rock of gold, but they're throwing it at you and it's going to hurt. It's going to hit you in the head and it's going to hurt. So if you have your guards up, you lost the gold. But if you let your guards down, it's going to hit you in the head. It's going to hurt. But now you can bend over and pick up this gold that you got that you didn't have before. That's the true feedback that somebody gave you. So we talked about knowing everybody has something they can teach me and that is going to hurt, but it's an invaluable lesson. And I feel lastly is actively seeking, what are my blind spots that somebody else can see? People that are closest to you, people that you work with, know you better than sometimes you know yourself. Here's what I mean. Nobody knows you better than you, but there are parts of you. What I've learned is your ego is lying to you. Your just like you have a biological immune system, you have a psychological immune system, and its job is to tell you whatever you tell yourself to make it seem true, right? If you say I'm a bad person, it's going to look for signs in your life that makes you feel like you're a bad person.
Well, what I'm guilty of is actually that, but justifying why I am that way. Something, being called to the carpet on my fighter instinct. Maybe not my first. First was like, no, I'm not. And then the second was, you know what? You get what you seek. Like, I've had to fight for so many things in my life. That's who I am. That's who I'm always going to be. That was my second reaction. There's no growth in that for me, though. That was the hard thing for me to realize. It hurt, and I justified it. And you know what? Accepting it and understanding the feedback and where it can grow doesn't negate the truth and why I am the way I am. Doesn't negate actually the growth that I got and the experiences that made me that way. But what this is new growth. And you saying that it hurts, but pick it up and do something with it. You know me, I love a good analogy. To me, it's a little bit like a really hard workout. It hurts. You hate it in the meantime, but you're better for it at the end. And so can you... there's good pain and bad pain in life, right? That's arguable because I was listening to something this morning that they were like, all pain is good pain. It's about how you frame it and what you make of it. But what I mean is the good pain is something that causes growth, learning, or something is better on the other side. It's not suffering for suffering. It's suffering for something greater.
So I can totally relate to one thing that you mentioned there, which is telling yourself, putting that pressure on yourself. For example, I tell myself I am a hard worker, right? And that becomes part of my identity. I'm a good person. I'm a hard worker. I'm this, I'm that, right? You build your identity and who you think you are. And this is a little bit outside of feedback now, but what I've experienced is now, let's say I'm a hard worker and all of a sudden I didn't get something done, right? That feeling is going to crush me with anxiety of I'm lazy, right? And these two opposites have been this has actually been a battle for me. I know in my life, I went out with one of my friends a few months ago that I haven't seen for years, right? We've known each other since high school. This guy has worked his way, like, struggled in school all the way to becoming a doctor, like really impressive. So I consider this guy somebody that I value his opinion. He's smart. And when we met, we were talking, and he's like, Ali, you're the hardest working person I know.
You loved that, didn't you?
But inside, as I listened to that, I was like, wow, I feel like really lazy right now.
Oh.
And somebody who's no, and I was like really trying to process. I was like, everybody tells me that, right? I do work a lot, but why do I have this feeling? Because then I don't get something done, and then I was like, oh my god, I'm the laziest person ever, right? And instead of giving myself permission to say, oh, this didn't happen yesterday, it's okay, let me just get it done right now. This anxiety creates extra pressure, and it kind of takes you off balance. So what I've learned is to change the language a little bit. I'm a hardworking person, and sometimes I'm not. Right?
Are you not though?
But that is giving yourself permission to say, I don't have to be this all the time.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I am this. Like,
Yeah.
this is who I am. But today, like, life happened. Right? Because I believe, like, whenever, like, you go outside of your identity, there's so much anxiety around that cognitive dissonance of this is who I say I am, but my actions don't match my identity. That creates, that's your biological immune system saying something here doesn't match, and it creates that extra pressure. And if you let that pile up, because this is something I've suffered with in life, if you let that pile up, that anxiety adds up in other ways, and it's going to really take you off balance, right? So I had to learn how to give myself permission to slow down, to take time off, to, hey, I didn't get this done, it's okay. Working hard is one of them. It could be other things, right? It could be, I'm a great wife, I'm a great husband, and today I wasn't, right? Am I going to let that bother me, or am I going to get back into it and just, do my best from this second on, right?
How do you let that not make you question your own identity? Because if you say, I'm a hard worker, but today I wasn't, like, to me, if you are something, you're always that thing. So the way my brain sees it is, I'm a hard worker. Today I allowed myself to rest. It doesn't mean you're not a hard worker in that moment, even, because we know, even with the workaholism and all the things, we know cognitively that rest actually makes you more productive when you do it strategically and use it the right way. Use it, right? And so to say I'm a hard worker, but I wasn't today, like, does that make you feel like a lack of identity in that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because the way I look at it is your identity is what you do most of the time, right? And you don't do things that are really against your identity, meaning I'm an honest person. If I lie today, it doesn't mean like I'm not, like today I lied, right? Do I give my permission to say, oh, that shouldn't have happened? Does that mean I'm not an honest person anymore at all? Or, does that mean that, like, I shouldn't actually lie? Right? You decide. Like, maybe part of my identity is I never lie, right? Or maybe I never do something, or I always do something. But when it comes to certain things, like, I'm a hard worker. So my friends always tell me, you don't take a lot of vacations. Then I go on a vacation, then I feel guilty that everybody else is working in the company and there's things happening, and I'm just, like, actually feeling anxious to do nothing. So I had to learn to say, like, maybe I didn't get everything I wanted. And by the way, other part of it is I'm a hard worker, and I pick up more than what I'm really capable of getting done. And it's like, it feels like I'm not a hard worker, but the reality is you just don't have enough time to do all of these things, what you should do, right? What you shouldn't do. So for me, it's really understanding your identity is like what you shape it to be. And I had to get smart about, like, this pressure that's causing anxiety is just created by me, and it's not serving me, right? So I had to learn how to, and this is something I'm still working on. There's some areas that are really, like, improved, and some areas that I realize, oh man, I should actually work on this area. So giving yourself permission to be who you are, rather than forcing yourself into, like, I didn't do something and that's not who I am, and letting that anxiety pile up.
So how can you, so this is interesting. How could you use the feedback from others, or dare I say, seek the feedback from others? Because sometimes I think we get caught in our own little mind, like our own little echo chamber. I am this way. I'm this way because this. It's served me until now. This is who I want to be. It can never change. So if you get feedback that challenges any of that, that's when I think you also get that anxiety. Or something I've experienced recently is the feedback caused me to feel this dysmorphia. I'm like, what? Like, that's not who I say I am. That's crazy. So how do you use the perception of others? And I think that's what's important. That's helped me recognize this. And as much as I want to be like, well, you're wrong. People's perception is their reality. So if their perception of me or how a certain situation went down is one way, even if I feel that it was wrong, that's my perception and theirs is theirs. So how do you use that to grow and to do better?
Yeah. So we talk about this at our company a lot, right? We talk about believability factor, which is we got from Ray Dalio's book. So one thing is, I'm not going to try to convince somebody that what you're telling me is wrong, right? Like, they might say, so for example, I've gotten the feedback that I don't smile, in my life. And in the beginning, when somebody says that to me, I'm like, whatever. But when you start, like, there was a point I was dating, somebody, and they mentioned, hey, all of my friends think, you're a jerk because you don't, can I say that?
Jerk? RBF?
Because you don't smile, right? And that's the first time where I'm like, okay, I've heard this a lot from a lot of people, so I don't think it's correct, but let's slow down and pay attention to it, right? So that's the first time in my life where I'm like, this is an outside feedback that I don't agree with, but it's definitely true because a lot of people have told me that, right? Maybe I didn't say that to myself at that moment. That is definitely true. But now I know this is something I'm still like, I have to remind myself all the time to smile,
well,
right?
What if all those people are wrong?
So believability factor, right? So Ray Dalio talks about in his book. So he runs a very large company, and there's thousands of people that work for him for him to be running a hedge fund, making decisions. Like, there are all thousands of people work for me to make one decision. So it's very important for me to hear everybody. However, I can't put as much weight on a feedback that an intern has as much as like one of my executive has, right? So I'm going to take the feedback from everybody, thank them, and then put them through that believability factor of how much experience do you have in this area? What's your expertise? Or if it's about me, how long you've known me, how close are you? Like all the filters that you want to create for yourself. So to me, it's like, I'm going to thank you for your feedback, and I'm going to just not have it on the shelf. I don't need to act on all of these things. I think data is important. Like if I have multiple people that tell me the same thing, there's a story there, even if I don't agree with it. That's what I've learned. There are things that maybe I absolutely don't agree with, but that's now the ego telling you something, but everybody else sees something that you don't in you.
So what if all of these people are telling you this, you don't smile enough, you seem like a jerk? Is there ever any feedback that you can say, okay, I've heard this from a lot of people, and maybe it's specific or non-specific, but is there ever, do you think, an opportunity to be like, I hear them, it's probably valid because many people have told me this, but I don't want to be a smiley person, so I hear you, but that it is who it is. I am who I am. It is what it is. Is there any? Do you always act on the feedback that the masses give you?
You don't have to, not at all. I mean, it depends on like what you're trying to do, what you're trying to build, what are your goals are, how you want your life to be. So to me, the surprising part of you don't smile enough is because you're a jerk. Well, I'm not a jerk. I thought I'm the nicest person there is. And you don't smile enough. Okay, the reason is I'm in my own head. I'm thinking.
I knew you were going to say that. I totally knew you were going to say that.
At our company, so we do a lot of Zoom meetings, and there are times where somebody has messaged. So I have, there's somebody in our company that's giving me feedback of you need to smile, right? And there are times where he messages me, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see when that feedback is coming. I was muted on the phone, negotiating something with somebody. I'm talking to this person on the phone, but everybody just looks at my camera, right? Or maybe we'll just in person, and I'm like, I know naturally when I think a lot in my head, and I don't, because of that, I'm not smiling. Doesn't mean I'm having a bad day. Doesn't mean I want to be a jerk. Yeah. I want you to really be happy around me. One of the things I want to do is I want to add joy to people's lives. So that feedback matters to me. But somebody might, give you a feedback. So for example, I work a lot, and feedback comes from my friends that, hey, what's the point? What are you working for? Why do you work so much? You need to enjoy it. And that's where I know, like, hey, I need to prioritize, joy through the journey. I don't need to wait for it. Like those are things I had to learn. And at the same time, I don't want to work less. Like I'm building something that I'm very excited about, and not everybody is gonna want to do life that way, and that's totally fine. So I look at in that area what part of their feedback matters to me, right? So till recently, I was like, oh, the part of the feedback that matters is make sure I'm enjoying the journey every day, right? Now, if work is enjoyable, it doesn't mean I'm like working and like I don't need to wait for the weekend or a vacation to have a great time. Like that's what I need to make sure I'm receiving from that feedback.
So you talked about the believability factor of people, and this is kind of a tangent, but I promise I'm gonna bring it full circle. We were having a conversation the other day of what do you do to invest in your personal growth and your professional growth? Like, do you invest dollars? Do you pay for a coach? Do you pay money to consume media? Do you have people you follow? Like, what do you do? And what I shared was I purposely on social media and other things and LinkedIn even follow people who I know have differing views, morals, values than I do, because otherwise I find, especially with that pesky algorithm, that we create our own echo chamber. And so if I only follow on social media people who have the same views and values as me, I'm going to constantly feel validated and never feel challenged. And so I'm, your natural inclination is like, see, I'm right. Everybody else in the world thinks so too. What you're not seeing is the billions of other people that disagree with you. And so I purposely follow accounts and people that have differing views that constantly keep me thinking and challenging my own self and values and, what I do. And so when I think about the believability thing, we birds of a feather tend to flock together. We end up working with and in relationships with like-minded people, like hence you and I are a lot alike. Like life brought us together in this company probably because of certain things about us. And so while I put a ton of believability factor in you, if you tell me something, I also remind myself that we're very alike. So while I trust you and value your feedback, I also have to make sure I'm out of that echo chamber. And that's where I get really uncomfortable when I go to somebody who doesn't feel as validating to me. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right. And so believability, sometimes I think you have to make sure you have somebody who is not afraid to challenge you or does have differing viewpoints. Otherwise, you're just in this constant like codependent validation cycle with people, and you can't grow from that necessarily.
Yeah, that's awesome. It reminds me of this might sound a little weird. I think I got this from John Maxwell or somebody. I have in my life what I call my board of directors, right? So let's say I'm going to make a really big decision. I'm going to, take a job, leave a job, like do something that affects my life. They don't know they're on my board of directors, but I call them, right? These are people that have influenced me. A lot of them are a lot older, right, than me, because they know more life. And I had to make sure there's diversity there. There's males and females. My dad, for example, hasn't lived in the United States, and he's in a different country. So his view is he's never been to the United States. However, there's still value in there, right? Because his age and his experiences and his entrepreneurship, his losses and wins, for example. So what I do is I call these people, and it changes throughout my life of who is there. But what I've realized at the end of the day, I take everybody's feedback and I give it some weight, and then I'll do what I think is the right thing to do, right? Like I'm not trying to have them convince me or me convincing them, right? As an example, if my uncle watches this, he's on my board of directors. I love him. Super awesome guy.
Now he knows he's on your board of directors.
Super awesome guy, super smart. But there is a lot of ways we look at life differently. I call him and I listen to him, and there are times where he gives me certain things that, like, he tells me, no, do this, and it's like sometimes I end up doing the complete opposite. But I never forget, like, there's so many valuable lessons that he's taught me throughout the years, whether I act on them or not. They're still in the back of my head, and I feel like that's going to help me throughout life. This board of director has helped me see things that I don't see. Like they're decades ahead of me, so they tell me things like, this might go this way right now, but next year, 2 years from now, happens this way. And I'm in business, so a lot of those people on like they're my former employers, or they're people that build businesses.
This is a little bit like the simple, like, old school term is like playing devil's advocate. But something I've tried to put in practice into my life is I know you agree with me, but tell me why I'm wrong. Like, challenge, tell me why I'm wrong, or tell me the other side of this. I had a conversation with our CEO this morning about something that we're like totally aligned on, and I'm like, I get it. I could sell this to the cows come home, makes sense to me, and I can foresee it not making sense to other people. So, like, I'm going to be devil's advocate. Here are the challenges I foresee. So, applying that same kind of concept to life decisions, your own personal growth, professional growth is I think in order to make a really good sound strategic decision, you have to look at what the path forward with both options are. Do I want to smile more? If I choose to do that and make a conscious effort towards that, what will the outcome be? Or do I not want to because that doesn't feel like who I am? I'm not going to smile while I'm in my head. That feels weird. So I'm not going to. And what are the consequences of that? And so just constantly saying, I think my silly phrase, and I probably should change it because it sounds silly, but I'm always like, tell me why I'm crazy. Like, tell me why I'm crazy. Please tell me why I'm crazy. I think it's similar to your thing that you mentioned earlier, is like having somebody or some people in your life that will tell you the truth. Because you said most people aren't going to tell you 100% of the truth of like what they're thinking in their head. And for me, I'm like, please tell me. Like, I want to know what you're thinking. You're not going to offend me. I want to know. So tell me why I'm crazy before you make a decision. So having a good board of directors that can give you those differing viewpoints, I think, is important.
Yeah. What I've learned is even if I go to somebody, if you come to me and say, give me absolutely raw feedback on what you see, there's a little bit of hesitation there, right? And on the other side, even if I go to somebody and I have this attitude of like, nothing is going to hurt, nobody's feedback should hurt me. These are the things that will help me, right? So I'm going to put my guards down. No matter what, no matter who you are, there's still going to be a little bit of a biological guard that goes up and says, right? So what helps is if you really so I can think of one feedback that our CEO gave me, which is, there was an event that we were going to do, and it didn't happen the way it should have. Not the one you're thinking about. Another one. At the end when I was talking to him and I was seeking feedback, and this one really was like, man, there was all of these things that are outside of what I can control, and the event went wrong. And his feedback was, well, I think it's your fault. Like, just straight up. It's your fault. You're the leader. I don't know how exactly he said it, but in like one sentence, this sword went in my heart. And not at that moment, but within a couple minutes of getting off the phone with him, I had to bring myself back up and say, this is super valuable feedback, right? Still, when I think of that moment, I can feel the emotion of how it hurt when he gave me that feeling, that feedback. However, if I can receive that feedback and be appreciative and maybe also act on it, in the future, I probably receive more raw feedbacks. Because nobody wants to hurt your feelings. Even if you go to them and say, give me your raw feedback, they're gonna just tell you what they're comfortable with. But if I can have people in my life that their feedback really helps me and is valuable, for example, our CEOs is, then I have to really I guess train that person that I don't like, I want your feedback and I'm going to use it, and I'm not going to get hurt.
Trust, right, with that person, because I think it's like, okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit and then see how you react, even if it's a subconscious thing. And if you receive it well, they're going to feel safe enough to like maybe give you something that hurts even more. If that's what you want, if you're a person that really wants to like give me the most painful thing you can tell me about myself or my action so I can grow from it, or choose to grow or not grow from it, it's hard. But the more you demonstrate that I'm not going to get upset, it's not going to hurt our relationship. In fact, I value it and strengthens our relationship. I think that's the way you get people to open up more to you and give you that real honest feedback, is by your reaction to it.
Yeah. And so this is something that's going through my head right now. I don't know like if scientifically I'm 100% accurate, but I also feel like two other factors matter in how I will get triggered or emotional by a feedback. One is my own, nervous system. Like if you train your nervous system, between stimulus and response, there is a gap, and that gap is what you decide to do. So somebody might get me feedback and I might blow up and get crazy, or I might just do nothing. right? And that's the difference of how I can control my emotions. And that's all about your nervous system. You can train your nervous system by meditation, exercise, cold, exposure, all of those things. And second to me is your, ego and also self-confidence, right? The more I do things, like accomplish hard things in life, right? For example, when I started running, when I could do more and more miles, I was more confident in all of areas of my life, right? Because it's just something challenging. And when I do that 10-mile run, 20-mile run, at the end of it, I feel so powerful, such a badass, that I'm more confident. So now if you want to give me feedback, I'm like, maybe not that day, but in general, as you do the harder things and you build yourself throughout life, other people's opinion are not going to shake you up as much. And then you're better. You're able to better look at it as a 30,000 feet view, and just see what you want to take and what you want to leave behind.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned a little bit ago about stimulus and response, and it reminded me of something that I read recently, and it was something along the lines of whether it is because of the person delivering it or even self-imposed. When feedback feels like a threat to us, then it kind of naturally initiates our fight or flight response because we sense danger, which is so ironic because that definitely comes from primitive days when fight or flight was literally like a bear is chasing you, you're going to die if you don't do something. That's not the world most of us live in these days. So, it's still, our biology is still at play a little bit, even in our, more modern world. Mm-hmm. And that fight or flight concept was something that really opened my eyes to maybe why I initially feel defensive when somebody gives me feedback, especially feedback I disagree with. And also feedback that feels like it's calling into question what we were talking about earlier, like my identity, right? Something like when somebody tells you don't smile enough, you're a jerk, and you're like, whoa, like that's complete opposite of who I think I am, who I say I am. That could feel like a threat and trigger a response like that.
Oh yeah, that's such a good point, because when they're saying you don't smile, you're a jerk, they're not saying you're a jerk. They're just saying you don't smile. Maybe I hear, right? So what was going through my mind is the example we talked about, where my leader was telling me, hey, the feedback is, this is where you felt you didn't lead this right. And what I heard at the moment was, you're not good enough. And I had to process that. And wait, he's not telling me that. He's just telling me at this one incident, in this one thing, you didn't do a good job. He's not even telling me you're not doing a good job. In general, I went and asked him for his feedback. So he's like, hey, in this area, you should look at it this way. But I looked at it as my identity, or who I am, or you're not good enough, or you're a bad leader, versus, no, it's just this one day, this one event, this is what happened. And I feel like really separating yourself from, like, you're not your actions, you're not your shortcomings, or even like you are more than that. So really knowing that they're not attacking me, they're just giving me feedback in this one area.
Something that's really helped me when I have to kind of like re-ground myself is I've had people that I've led, when I give them critical feedback, I've literally had people, like, I gave them feedback on like one incident, and they're like, well, I guess I should just quit. And I'm like, wait, no, like, no, you're still the right person for this role. Like, you still bring immense value to what you're doing in the team and the mission. It's just feedback on this one thing. So I can clearly see in other people, which is we're always better at, right? That person, their flight mode being triggered, right? Like, fine, then I'm running away from this thing because it doesn't feel good right now. Me, on the other hand, typically it's fight that's triggered, or it's like, you're wrong. That's not the case. But when I'm doing that with other people, I actually can empathize more with them and why they actually, their knee jerk is like, fine, I'm out of here. It's like, hold on, no, slow down. I'm not attacking you personally. Like, I still value you. Like, I still want you here, because if that wasn't the case, you wouldn't be on the team. And so reminding myself to be as gentle and empathetic with myself and my feelings, and like slow down and process them in order to be able to really take the feedback and do something with it.
Yeah. What I always think about is like we always have the ability to change whatever area in our lives that we want. So we hear you're capable of doing anything you want to accomplish a lot, right? I just think it's a little bit different that you're able to accomplish anything you want as long as you're willing to pay the price, right? As long as you're willing to do the work, as long as you're willing to maybe change yourself in an area, or get better in an area, get more skillful in an area. So if I believe that notion that I can do whatever I want because my skills will add up and I'll get better, and then those skills will have utility in the world, then I shouldn't be upset when somebody says, you don't smile enough. So then I could ask myself, is that feedback valuable? Do I want to smile? Like maybe because like, hey, I'm in sales and smiling affects my, a lot of areas of my life. Maybe I want to change that. So rather than getting upset at that, I need to be able to look at feedback nakedly and say, you know, this feedback, I can change that. Do I want to change it in this area? Do I not want to change it? Rather than getting upset about it, right? So I can really separate certain areas and seek feedback around like, hey, I want to get better in this area. I want to get better in that area, and choose the certain things that, you know what, this is just not important in my life right now. I don't want to put time and energy into changing that, right?
So I don't want to wrap up this conversation without talking about really helpful tactical ways that people can implement these things that you've learned along the way. And I know something that's helped me be able to, a couple of things. It's a journey, right? So receiving feedback, especially critical feedback, it hurts. It's that, it hurts. Somebody's throwing something at you, hits you in the head. So the step one for me is slow down, like think about the intention. It's not a long think, like, especially coming from people in our world. Like, I know it's good intention, so I don't have to like dwell on that too hard. I know it's good intention. What are we trying to solve? And slow down before I just cave to my emotions and react. The other thing that's really helped me, because if I decidedly want to grow from the feedback that I'm receiving, and you still have to put it through the filter, what is the thing I'm willing to change right now, and what am I not ready to? Me understanding myself and how I process information and interpret things has really helped me. And what I mean by that is this recent feedback that I've received, and again, a lot of it was self-imposed by me, because it was a situation where I was like, I don't like how that went. Obviously, other people validated, yeah, it wasn't so good. I'm going to change that. I know that my brain works, and it drives people crazy. Some people that know me, it drives them crazy. But to absorb all of the information that I can, ask questions, read things, understand really what's going on inside of me, and then I can only then understand how to change it and how to move forward from it. So I did a lot of like understanding, self-exploration, and research on that fight or flight thing, how our past experiences shape our reactions today to things, and really reflected hard in that mirror on how that shows up in my life. And then really I even journaled about it, like, what do I want to be different, and then reverse engineer, like, this causes me to react this way. I need to get control of that, because my emotions don't control me. I control my actions, right? So in your opinion, how can somebody use giving and receiving feedback on their journey to build a $1 billion business?
Yeah, so building a big business or doing anything important in life is really about building yourself, right? It's about becoming the person that's capable of doing that, right? For example, you see many times that somebody who's built a really large business, a billionaire or somebody, goes out of business, or they lose a lot, or something happens in their personal life, or they go bankrupt, and they come back very fast, right? 100 times faster than in the past. Why? Because they're a different person now. They are the person that's very capable of doing that again, right? So you have to look at your journey that way, like that. Now, income is a part of it, but I look at life as in like everything that you want to achieve, like your relationships, your finances, your health, and everything, all the areas of your life. And it's really about building yourself in those areas. So to me, it's about, if I want to go from like maybe having a job to like, okay, I'm going to build a business and take this to 100,000 and a million and 10 million, 100 million, right? This requires me and people around me to get stronger. And I don't mean that, just physically. Really get stronger. Like if you look at somebody who's built something really big, they rarely care about what everybody else thought throughout the way. Like you care about what people think. That's just human wiring. We're social animals. We care about what others think. But if you can understand that certain thoughts that I have about what other people think don't really affect my life at all. Nobody thinks about me more than a second. They're all like, think about yourself and how much thought you're giving to other people and how much you're thinking that other people look at you. So with that, I think one of the biggest part that we touched on, being able to receive feedback, is really being able to strengthen your nervous system. So when you hear that feedback, you don't immediately go to fight or flight. You don't immediately go and freeze, right? There is time to process it, right? So again, between stimulus and response, there's a gap, and you want to increase that gap to have control over your own decision of okay, I don't need to get excited about this right now. And that happens. You can, we can do a whole episode on this, but the best, quick ways are exercise, diet, quieting your mind, and cold exposures. Those are the 4 areas that I know really make a difference in your nervous system and in your own ability to stay calm under pressure.
Cold exposure sounds cold.
Cold exposure sounds crazy. And you know this about me, and we talk about it. If you just Google or go on YouTube and look at taking an ice bath or how cold exposure, certain benefits it has for it, in the beginning it seems crazy, but here's what I mean. I take cold baths, right? I fill up the bath with ice and I go in it. And so this is what you have to realize. Your body can tolerate that. There's no problem with, I'm not going to your body can stay in a freezing cold water, usually go between 40 to 45 degree water. Your body can tolerate that for a very long time. It's your mind that right away says, we're about to die. Get out of here, right? So it never gets easy. This is why I love cold showers or cold baths, because every day it's as difficult as the day before. It's not like going to the gym and these weights are getting easier. That first 30 seconds to a minute is, no matter what, the hardest thing you're going to do. But there is a time within 30 seconds to a minute where your mind starts to come down and says, there's nothing wrong here. I'm okay. And the next 30 seconds becomes, this water doesn't feel cold anymore. I can stay here forever. So when usually I take the ice bath, I also open the shower and the cold water is coming. And this cold water is not as cold as the ice bath, the water that's in the bath. And that's cold water, the coldest setting, starts to feel warm, right? This is only 2 minutes. But within that 2 minutes, you've trained your nervous system slowly to not go from, I'm about to die. Well, this is actually not a big deal. So slowly over time, your nervous system is able to stay calm in certain. So meditation and cold exposure really train your nervous system that you don't have to stay alert all the time, that you can actually calm down.
So I love an analogy, by the way. So I think the ice bath is a good analogy for receiving feedback, at least for me. I think if you're somebody who is a strong, dominant personality, you have feelings and emotions. And I think if in the past when you've received feedback, it felt like a bad thing. And now I'm not saying that receiving all feedback is good, because there's definitely feedback that just feels very wrong, and not in a defensive way, but actually wrong. You may have received feedback from somebody who didn't know how to give it the right way. So that may not be a good scenario. There's also the believability factor, and also is this the person that I should be receiving feedback from? Is this somebody that I respect and trust enough to give me the feedback? All of those things aside, if it was good feedback from somebody like and trust, and it still feels kind of icky or puts you in a bad mood, quite honestly, that's the thing I think we can take away from this mostly, is slow down first. That 30 seconds to a minute that it takes you to get used to the bath, that you then realize, oh, I'm not dying. To me, that's my analogy, my metaphor for how I feel like receiving critical feedback. Okay, we're not going to die. It doesn't mean we're not the right person. It doesn't mean we're a bad person. Let's process this. And then remember the intention and focus on the goal. What is the goal outcome here, and what can you do to change it?
Yeah. Lastly, I think if something really bothers, like if what you mentioned, all of those criteria are there, and this is feedback that's actually useful, and it still feels icky, I think you actually got to go deeper and see why, right? If something is really bothering me, there's something down there like that I need to figure out why. Like there's an insecurity there, right? And if I can get to it and I can resolve it, it will help me move forward faster in life, right? Because if somebody comes and gives me a feedback that I don't even care about in my life, it's not going to upset me. So why does this other one upset me? That's actually supposed to be useful.
Yeah.
So there's something that's actually there that I need to see why, right? And this will take time, but these are the things now I can process these things and again keep stepping up.
This is something I think I would take back to my board of directors, like you talked about, or a person that you trust. And actually, I did that with people that are close to me and I trust, and said, here's a scenario, here's how it went down, here's how I'm feeling. Like, help me not just like validate that I'm right and that it's okay, because that's not what I want. Like, that's not gonna cause me to grow. It's going to cause the situation to keep occurring again, and that's not what the outcome is, or the desired outcome is. So help me, help me understand where this is coming from, why I feel this way, and how I move it forward. I think that's good. All right, billionaires, I think we are ready to move things forward. Thank you, Ali. I always love chatting with you. Got some even more insight on things I can do to grow and receive feedback better, and even reflect on how I can maybe give feedback. So we'll definitely do an episode on how to give others feedback in a way that helps them grow and not feel icky.
Definitely. I'll be listening during that episode to you. So.
No. You're going to teach me.
So same here. I love always listening to you and learning with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
See ya.